Everyone knew Lorne Greene as the steady, unshakable father of Bonanza.
I really wanted to get out of the show. I thought the show was not doing what I'd been told the show was going to be about.
The kind of man who stood for discipline, decency, and keeping the peace no matter what. The last man in Hollywood you would ever expect to hate anyone. But behind that calm exterior lived something few people ever saw. For years, Greene privately despised 5 people so deeply, he never forgave a single one of them. What they did and why Greene took it to his grave is the part Hollywood never wanted you to know. John Wayne. Nobody expected the first name on Greene's list to be the most powerful cowboy in Hollywood history. But John Wayne was the one who started it all, and he did it in the most public, humiliating way possible.
I'd let it drop, friend.
By April 1966, Lorne Greene had been playing Ben Cartwright for 7 years. Bonanza was one of the most watched shows on American television. Millions of families sat down every Sunday night to watch it. Greene had shaped the show into something he was genuinely proud of.
Prime stock down from the high pasture and he loses nary a one.
A Western built around family, moral choices, and the idea that a strong man could solve problems without reaching for a gun first. That philosophy was the heart of everything he had built. John Wayne had a completely different idea of what a Western should be. Wayne had spent his entire career making big screen films about raw survival, violence, and the brutal reality of the frontier. He had turned down the lead role in Gunsmoke years earlier because he refused to be a television cowboy. He considered the small screen beneath him, and he had said publicly that TV westerns were doing what he called couch work, meaning they spent too much time on feelings, psychology, and moral lessons instead of showing the real harshness of the West. To Wayne, that kind of storytelling was soft. It was not the West he knew or respected. Bonanza was exactly the kind of show Wayne was describing, and in April 1966, he made sure everyone knew it. At a press conference at the Beverly Hills Hotel, cameras everywhere and journalists packed shoulder to shoulder, a reporter asked Wayne whether television westerns were damaging the Western genre by making it too soft and too safe. Wayne did not pause. He did not think about who was in the room or whose career his answer might damage. He leaned into the microphone and said it plainly. If you want the West without blood or guts, watch Bonanza. The room erupted. Reporters laughed. Photographers shouted that it was going on page 1. By that evening, it was. Newspapers carrying Wayne's quote were left in a stack outside Greene's dressing room at Paramount Studios. A crew member who was there that day said Greene did not shout or throw anything. He just stood completely still and stared at the words. That stillness said everything. What Wayne had done was not just make a joke. He had told every journalist, every studio executive, and every person in the industry that Bonanza was not a real Western, that it was a cleaned-up, watered-down version of the West made for people who could not handle the truth. And he had said it at the most public moment possible, in a room full of people whose opinions shaped careers. Weeks later, the wound was ripped open again. At a charity banquet in Beverly Hills, Wayne spotted Greene in a room full of studio heads, network executives, and producers, exactly the people whose respect Greene needed most. Wayne walked over, slapped Greene hard on the back, and announced loudly that television cowboys had it easy and should try real dust sometime. People laughed again. Greene smiled because the room expected him to. But the people who knew him well watched his eyes go flat. The damage spread fast. Radio hosts began openly mocking Bonanza. Columnists started writing that Wayne represented the real West, while Greene represented the commercial version, a safe, sponsored imitation built for families rather than film.
Not into Virginia City, not yet. It's exactly what they want. Just the 4 Cartwrights.
NBC panicked and pushed Greene into a series of interviews to defend the show and correct public perception. Each interview made things worse. Every time Greene opened his mouth to defend himself, it reminded people of what Wayne had said. Wayne never apologized. He never explained himself or softened his words. He simply moved on. because for him, it had just been a throwaway comment at a press conference. Greene hated him for that, not for the joke itself, but for how little it had cost Wayne to make it. One sentence, one laugh from the room, and Wayne had walked away untouched, while Greene spent weeks cleaning up the damage. That kind of carelessness Greene found unforgivable. You do not dismiss a man's life work in front of an entire industry and then act like nothing happened. Greene never confronted Wayne directly. He never gave an interview calling him out by name. But privately, he told people close to him exactly how it had felt. Wayne had made him feel like a guest in his own genre, someone who was tolerated but never truly respected. And that feeling, Greene said, never fully went away. He carried it for the rest of his career, and he never forgave Wayne for putting it there. Clint Eastwood. John Wayne had humiliated Greene publicly and loudly. Clint Eastwood did something quieter, something Greene found even harder to shake. Eastwood simply became the most powerful figure in Hollywood, and in doing so, made everything Greene had built feel like it belonged to another century. Greene hated him for it, not because Eastwood attacked him, but because Eastwood made him feel invisible. And for a man who had spent 14 years as the moral center of American television, invisibility was its own kind of violence. Eastwood had actually started out in television. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, he played Rowdy Yates on Rawhide, a conventional, well-behaved cowboy who followed the rules and caused no trouble. Exactly the kind of character Greene had built his entire career around. But Eastwood grew restless. He later said openly that he got tired of playing the conventional white hat hero, the kind of man who was kind to everyone, never crossed a line, and always did the right thing. He said it was time to be something different, so he walked away from that image completely and never looked back. What he became was the opposite of Ben Cartwright in every possible way. By the time Eastwood made Dirty Harry in 1971, he had already built his reputation through the spaghetti westerns.
Oh no, wait, not you. You remain tied. I'll keep the money and you can have the rope.
Films made in Europe where he played a nameless gunfighter who killed without hesitation and explained himself to nobody. These were not films about family or moral choice. They were films about survival and power. Eastwood showed almost no emotion. He did not rescue people out of kindness. He acted out of self-interest, and audiences loved every second of it. Dirty Harry took that same energy and dropped it into a modern American city. Eastwood played a police detective who ignored rules, bypassed the law, and used violence to get results.
The girl, where is she?
You tried to kill me!
If I tried that, your head would be splattered all over this field. Now, where's the girl?
The film made $36 million on a $4 million budget. It was a cultural earthquake. Some critics called it morally dangerous. None of that mattered. The audience had spoken, and what they were saying directly threatened everything Greene stood for. In late 1971, Eastwood was sitting in a press room giving interviews to promote Dirty Harry. A reporter asked him about the television westerns that were still on the air at the time, the kind that preached right from wrong and avoided unnecessary violence. Everyone in that room understood that was a direct reference to Bonanza and Greene's character, Ben Cartwright. Eastwood leaned slightly forward, gave the relaxed half-smile he was famous for, and said it simply, "Real cowboys don't preach, they survive." He was not angry when he said it. He did not need to be. He was simply describing the difference between himself and Greene and letting everyone draw their own conclusions.
Your spurs.
Greene read the quote and closed the magazine. Slowly, too slowly, because those 5 words had just summed up everything the industry was now choosing over him. It was not a debate, it was a dismissal. It got worse. At a studio party, someone asked Eastwood directly what he thought about the Cartwrights. He shrugged, looked away, and said, "They're the polite West. I'm not." He said it without malice, without even much interest. And that casual indifference was the most painful part. Greene was not worth a real argument. He was not even worth Eastwood's full attention. He was simply a different era that had already passed. Magazines described Eastwood as John Wayne's natural heir. That single description skipped over Greene entirely, as if he had never existed between them. Magazine columns started calling Eastwood the New Frontier and Greene the Sunset. Directors told each other in meetings that audiences no longer wanted men who thought carefully before acting. They wanted Eastwood's cold, immediate, unapologetic force.
I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I've kind of lost track myself.
In 1972, the exact year Bonanza was canceled, Eastwood was voted the #1 box office star in America. Greene never said a hostile word about Eastwood publicly, but privately he told people close to him exactly what he felt. Eastwood had not attacked him. He had simply replaced the world Greene belonged to. He had made Greene's entire career feel like a phase Hollywood had grown out of, and Greene hated him for that. Not with noise, not with confrontation, but with a quiet, permanent resentment that never left. Because you can fight an enemy. You cannot fight being made irrelevant. And irrelevance, Greene discovered, is the worst thing Hollywood can do to a man. Michael Landon. John Wayne attacked Greene from the outside. Clint Eastwood replaced him from a distance. But Michael Landon did something neither of them could have done. He walked through a door Greene himself had opened and then closed it behind him. That is what made this one different. That is what made it the wound that hurt the most. When Bonanza began in 1959, Landon was 22 years old. He was the youngest member of the cast, playing Little Joe Cartwright, the impulsive, hot-headed youngest son of Ben Cartwright. Greene was the anchor, the father, the authority. Everything on that show flowed through him. Landon was talented, and Greene recognized it immediately. He saw something in the young actor that most people around them had not yet noticed. A sharp creative instinct, a natural ability to connect with audiences emotionally. Greene told producers early on that Landon had a wonderful imagination and knew how to touch people. He meant it as a compliment and as support. What he did not realize was that he was describing exactly the qualities that would eventually push him out of his own show. By the mid-1960s, Landon was receiving more fan mail than any other cast member on Bonanza. More than Greene, more than Dan Blocker. Audiences were connecting with Little Joe in a way that was quietly shifting the center of gravity on the show.
It's a miracle. Yeah, that's what it is, Mr. Bornstein. It's a miracle, all right.
NBC noticed. The network began paying close attention to what Landon brought to the screen and what audiences responded to most strongly. Greene felt this shift, but said nothing publicly. He continued to show up and carry the show the way he always had. Then Landon came to Greene directly. He told Greene he had written a script and wanted to direct it himself. He wanted to move behind the camera and shape the story rather than just perform in it. But on a show like Bonanza, an actor could not simply decide to write and direct an episode on his own. Every major creative decision had to go through executive producer David Dortor, the man who had created the show and controlled everything from scripts to budget to the overall direction of the series. Landon needed Dortor's approval, and getting that approval would be much easier with Greene's backing. Greene had been on the show longer than anyone. He had Dortor's ear and his trust. So Greene went to Dortor personally and used that relationship to vouch for Landon, telling him directly that he believed in Landon's creative ability and that giving him this opportunity was the right thing to do. He used his authority and reputation to open a door that Landon could not have opened by himself. That decision would cost him everything. Once Landon had Greene's support and NBC's attention, he moved quickly. He began writing more scripts. He pushed for stories that focused on younger characters and their personal struggles, romance, loss, identity. These were emotional stories that put Little Joe at the center and pushed Ben Cartwright toward the edges. Greene watched his own role shrink episode by episode. Scenes that would once have belonged to him were now built around Landon. What made it worse was how Landon operated. He did not argue with Greene openly. He did not challenge him in meetings or confront him directly. He simply went around him. He took scripts directly to NBC executives without running them through the established chain of command. He bypassed the senior producers and writers who had shaped Bonanza from the very beginning. One day, he walked onto the set holding a letter from NBC confirming that one of his scripts had been approved. He looked at the room, tapped the letter, and said calmly that it looked like the network was ready for something new. Greene stood completely still when he heard those words, because he understood exactly what they meant. This was not about one episode. Power was moving, and it was moving away from him. The breaking point came in 1972 during a script meeting for the episode called Forever. This was Landon's story about Little Joe falling in love and getting married. It was designed from the first page to be Little Joe's moment, emotional, personal, and centered entirely on the youngest Cartwright.
I'm home. See how quick you forget I'm home.
Greene sat at the table and turned through the pages quietly. Scene after scene passed without his character doing anything meaningful. Ben Cartwright, the man Greene had spent 13 years building into the moral heart of the series, was a background figure in his own home. When Greene looked up, Landon was already watching him from across the table, steady, confident. He said simply that the audience wanted a new direction. No apology, no acknowledgement of what this meant for Greene or for the show they had built together. Just a statement of fact, delivered and done. Greene placed the script down carefully. According to those present, Greene stood up and walked out of the room without saying another word. A producer who was sitting at that table said the silence Greene left behind could have cracked glass. After that day, the set divided. Crew members and cast aligned themselves on one side or the other. Magazines began calling Landon the new architect of Bonanza. Articles praised his creative vision and his instinct for what modern audiences wanted. Greene's name appeared less and less in those pieces. What made it unforgivable was the specific way it had happened. Greene had not been defeated by a stranger or blindsided by someone he never trusted. He had been overtaken by someone he had personally championed. He had opened the door. He had made the calls. And Landon had used every bit of that support to build something that had no room for the man who gave it to him. Greene never attacked Landon publicly. He never gave an interview describing what had happened. But 12 years later, when Landon was producing Highway to Heaven, he called Greene and offered him a guest role. Greene accepted. He showed up. He did the work. He called the experience marvelous. But accepting a guest role on someone else's show is not forgiveness.
Meet the family?
Oh, yes, we had a nice little chat.
Pretty awful, aren't they? Now, anybody else said it, I'd fight him to the death.
It is just two professionals being civil, and the people who knew Greene well understood the difference. He had built Bonanza from the ground up and watched someone he trusted dismantle his place in it piece by piece. That kind of thing does not disappear because you shake hands 12 years later. Greene said it himself. Landon had taken nothing from him intentionally, but somehow he had taken everything. And the fact that it was not intentional made it worse, because it meant Greene could not even be angry at a direct betrayal. He could only watch someone he helped build walk past him without looking back. Pernell Roberts. Pernell Roberts did something the others never dared to do. He stood directly in front of Greene, looked him in the eye, and told him that everything he had built was not worth believing in. He said it in script meetings, in newspapers, and on television. And he kept saying it long after he had already walked out the door. Roberts came to Bonanza as a serious theater actor.
You know what that means?
No, older brother, I'm waiting for you to tell me.
All right, I'll tell you. It means you're supposed to be a man now, fit to do a man's work.
Before the show, he had won acclaim on stage playing Macbeth, one of the most demanding roles in classical theater. He saw himself as a genuine dramatic artist, not a television cowboy, not a weekly family entertainer, a serious actor who belonged on serious stages doing serious work.
That means bringing 1,000 head of cattle down from pastures to the bottomland.
Those cattle, every last head of them, have been grazing in bottomland.
From the very first day he arrived on the Bonanza set, that attitude was visible to everyone around him. Greene sensed it immediately, but he said nothing. He believed that discipline and patience were part of leadership. He believed that if he held the show together with enough care and consistency, Roberts would eventually find his place within it. He was wrong. The conflict exploded during a script meeting in the early 1960s. The room was full. Writers, producers, cast members all present. Roberts leaned back in his chair, lifted the script in front of him, and said in front of everyone, "These stories are too clean. Ben Cartwright isn't a father. He's a fantasy." Every head in the room turned toward Greene. He said nothing. He sat very still and absorbed it. But the people who knew him well could see it in his posture, the tightening across his shoulders, the way his jaw set. He had heard what Roberts said, and he had understood exactly what it meant. This was not a creative note about a script. This was a rejection of the entire foundation Greene had spent years building. Roberts kept pushing. He questioned Greene's character at every opportunity. Then in 1963, it escalated further. During another heated script discussion, Roberts slammed a script down on the conference table hard enough to make everyone flinch. He looked directly across at Greene and said, "Adam can't grow because Ben won't let him." Adam Cartwright was the character Roberts played. He was Ben's eldest son, the one who was supposed to be building his own life and identity. Roberts was not just talking about the script. He was saying that Greene's character was suffocating his. The room went completely silent. Greene looked at Roberts for a long moment before answering. His voice was steady and controlled. "Adam chooses family," he said. "That's not weakness." Roberts shook his head, stood up, and walked out. But Roberts was not finished. Outside of script rooms and production meetings, he began saying things publicly that were even more damaging. He told reporters openly that he felt like a middle-aged teenager on the show, going around saying, "Yes, Pa, no, Pa" on cue. He said it was downright disgusting, such dialogue for a grown man. He questioned publicly why 3 adult men had to ask their father's permission for everything they did. Every word he said in those interviews was a direct public attack on Greene's authority as the patriarch of the show. He also began skipping promotional appearances. He refused to show up for charity events that the rest of the cast attended. He left Greene alone in front of press and public to answer questions about the show's unity. NBC executives were furious. They went to Greene and begged him to keep the peace. Greene became the show's mediator, a role he never wanted and deeply resented being forced into. Then in 1965, Roberts did the one thing that made forgiveness permanently impossible. He gave an interview to the San Francisco Chronicle, and the quote he delivered spread through Hollywood instantly. "I don't believe in Ben Cartwright," he said. "He's not real. He's too perfect to respect." To Greene, those words were not a criticism of a fictional character. They were a public verdict on 14 years of his life. Ben Cartwright was not just a role Greene played. It was the fullest expression of what he believed a man should be. The idea that strength and decency could exist together, that a father could hold a family together through respect rather than fear. Roberts had just told every newspaper reader in America that those values were a fantasy not worth respecting, and he had done it with Greene's name attached. What made it cut even deeper was what happened before Roberts left. Greene had gone to him privately. He had looked Roberts in the eye and made him a personal offer. "Stay with the series a few more years," Greene told him, "and you will be able to build your own theater. You will be able to hire Tennessee Williams or anyone else to write a play for you." Greene was not just asking him to stay. He was offering Roberts the very thing Roberts claimed he wanted most, the freedom to do serious artistic work on his own terms. Roberts said no. He walked out anyway, and then he kept attacking the show publicly from the outside for years afterward. When Roberts left in 1965, his character Adam Cartwright was simply written out of the series without explanation. Greene never addressed the absence publicly. He simply carried on. That combination, the private rejection, the public humiliation, and the ongoing attacks from outside, was something Greene never found a way past. Guy Williams. Every name on this list had hurt Greene in a specific way, but Guy Williams represented something different from all of them. Williams did not attack Greene. He did not undermine him or publicly dismiss him. He simply showed up, and the fact that he showed up at all was the most threatening thing any of them had done. Williams was already a star when he arrived on Bonanza. Audiences knew him as Zorro, the swashbuckling, charming hero he had played for Disney for years. He was magnetic, physically imposing, and enormously popular. When he walked onto the Bonanza set in 1964, he brought all of that with him, and the studio knew exactly what they were doing by bringing him there. Pernell Roberts had been making noise about leaving the show for years. The producers and NBC executives needed a plan, so they brought Williams in to play Will Cartwright, Ben's nephew, and positioned him as a direct replacement for Roberts. The message to the cast was clear. The Cartwright family was not irreplaceable. If one man left, another could be brought in. The show would continue with or without anyone currently on it. For Greene, that message hit like a punch to the chest. He had spent 14 years building Ben Cartwright into the moral center of Bonanza. He had shaped the character, fought for the show's values, defended its philosophy against Wayne, watched Eastwood make it look outdated, and survived Landon quietly shifting power away from him. Through all of it, he had held on to one belief, that he was the irreplaceable heart of the series. Now the studio was telling him directly that was not true. They had found someone popular enough to slot into the family structure and keep the ratings alive, and audiences responded to Williams immediately. Fan mail came in. Viewers liked Will Cartwright. The replacement was working. Greene and Landon both felt it, the unsettling realization that the studio had just proven a point neither of them wanted proven. A leading Cartwright could be swapped out. The show could survive without any of them. Rumors spread quickly through the production that both Greene and Landon felt genuinely threatened by Williams' popularity. Greene never confronted Williams directly. There was nothing to confront him about. Williams was a professional who had been hired to do a job. The anger Greene felt was toward what Williams represented, a studio that was willing to treat 14 years of his work as something replaceable, something that could be upgraded when the ratings demanded it. Roberts eventually changed his mind and decided to stay for one final season. When he did, Williams was quietly pushed out. He went on to play Professor John Robinson in Lost in Space and became a star all over again. He retired to Argentina in 1979 and died of a brain aneurysm in 1989. He never knew the full extent of the threat his arrival had represented to the men already on that set. Greene never spoke publicly about what Williams's arrival had meant to him. He was too disciplined for that, but the people who worked closely with him during that period said something shifted in him after 1964. He had survived Wayne's public humiliation. He had watched Eastwood make his entire philosophy look obsolete. He had felt Landon quietly dismantle his authority from within. He had endured Roberts attacking his values in front of the world. And now the studio itself had told him that none of it, not everything he had sacrificed to build that show, made him irreplaceable. That was the wound that tied everything together. Every name on this list had taken something from him. But the studio's decision to bring in Guy Williams was the moment Greene understood that the industry he had given everything to did not feel the same way about him. He never forgave that. Not Williams, not the studio, not any of them. Because what they had all done, in their different ways, for their different reasons, was tell the same man the same thing over and over again. That what he built did not matter as much as he believed it did. And for a man whose entire life had been about building things that lasted, that was the one verdict he could never accept.